All right, joining us now is one of the lawmakers who will be briefed on the bounties intel today. Member of the Armed Services and Homeland Security Committees, Democratic Congresswoman Elissa Slotkin of Michigan. She previously served as a Middle East analyst for the CIA and also served as acting Assistant Secretary of Defense for International Security Affairs, where she oversaw Middle East policy, among other regions. This is your wheelhouse. What are you hoping to learn at the White House today?
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking for two things. First is the substance. You know, what does the intel reporting say? What's the veracity of the reporting? How many sources do we have? What do we know? How long have we known it? Have we been able to verify it? And then the process. You know, we know that the White House seems to have discussed this amongst themselves at the staff level. They had a menu of options to try and think this through. Did it go to the president? When did it go to the president? And in particular, the thing I'm interested in is, you know, the president has had 5 phone calls with Vladimir Putin between March 30th and now, including where he invited them to, you know, suggested that they be invited to come into the G7. What did the president know and not know as he's trying to warm up that relationship with Putin and invite him in? Were American forces being targeted while he's trying to cozy up to Putin?
Congresswoman, it's Willie Geister, the perfect guest to have on this morning because you have worked for the CIA and the DNI and the National Security Council as well. So in your assessment, if this piece of information was available to intel agencies, that Russia, the intelligence service of Russia, was using Taliban-backed militants to attack American forces in Afghanistan, would that piece of information rise to the level of telling the president?
Sure. I mean, I think, listen, you have to check this stuff out, and you have to, like, look at the body of intelligence. But if they're having a debate about it and the NSC is getting a piece of finished intelligence, you know, a report from the CIA, that means the CIA has done their own internal vetting. They've looked at this and they're putting it forward. You know, I worked at the NSC under Bush and then under Obama. If we got a report like that, at a minimum, you would have a note, a memo slapped on top by the National Security Advisor saying, Mr. President, we're looking into this, but I wanted to make you aware. Here's what we're doing to follow up, and here's when I'm going to get back to you on it. And in the meantime, let's just think through our options with Russia right now, just until we confirm what we're looking at here. And the fact that that didn't happen, that it wasn't flagged in that kind of a way, just really raises my eyebrows, certainly. And, you know, I can't imagine that a report like this is going to the White House without it also being in the presidential daily brief. That's something I wrote as a CIA analyst. I briefed to multiple presidents in the Oval Office. And with something like this, if there's a body of intelligence, that would go directly to the president, even if his staff didn't feel like they needed to flag it.
Gene Robinson has the next question. Gene?
Congresswoman, some of your Republican colleagues have been briefed on this intelligence. Apparently, the president still has not been briefed, which is astounding. But have you heard anything? Is there any buzz as to any sort of legitimate explanation for the president not knowing this, other than, you know, incompetence or frankly being compromised or corrupt in some way? What is there any sort of legitimate reason why this wouldn't have risen to the president and stuck with him?
Well, I mean, I'm just reading the statements that are coming out from my peers who were briefed yesterday, and now I'm going in to be briefed this morning. And a lot of them have reflected on, you know, we weren't sure the intelligence was good. And apparently one of the intelligence agencies dissented and didn't like the intelligence that they were seeing. So that seems to be kind of the new thing coming out. And, you know, I can't make an independent judgment on that because I haven't heard the brief. What I do know is that because of intelligence problems we've had in the past, intelligence agencies have a way to make clear their dissent. If there's a piece that's going to the president by the CIA and the DIA doesn't agree with it, they can write a dissent. I used to write some of these at the bottom of the piece and say, Mr. President, the Defense Intelligence Agency doesn't support the top lines of this piece. We've had an internal debate and we don't support it. That was after the failures in Iraq, the WMD in you know, Saddam Hussein. We made those changes. So I'm glad to hear that I think the Director of National Intelligence is going to be in the room today, because there is a procedure to talk to the president when there's dissenting views. But that seems to be the kind of new thing I hear coming out from my colleagues.
Katty Kay.
Congressman, we heard Kayleigh McEnany yesterday saying that there were dissenting views, that there wasn't consensus, and that was why this had not made it to the president. Can you just totally clarify for us whether the fact that some people had a different view on this intelligence would mean that it wouldn't make it to the president's actual desk or be flagged up for him? I mean, how common is it that there might be dissenting views, just to clarify that?
Yeah, I think it depends on the body of intelligence. If you have just a single report, a few reports, and there's one of the agencies is saying, you know what, we don't think that this is serious, then I can see it being kept from the president. But the problem is, from what I've been hearing, and I want to wait until I get the brief, from what I've been hearing, multiple pieces of finished intelligence. So an analytic piece was written with multiple pieces of information. The CIA can't just write something for the president that has a single weak source. It's something that they vet themselves internally. So if a piece like that was written and there's a dissenting view, there is a way that we established for agencies to express that to the president. But the bottom line here is that this intelligence was that the Russians could be putting a bounty on American soldiers. When it's something that important, certainly under Bush, I worked under President Bush, I worked under President Obama, that piece would have gone to the president, and if there was a dissent, it would have been flagged for him, there would have been a note, and the National Security Advisor would help him work through it and just flag it and say, Mr. President, we're trying to understand what's happening here. And so the idea that he wasn't told or he didn't know is really hard. Either he got it and he's not remembering or saying, or the staff didn't provide it to him, and both feel like a problem.
All right, Congresswoman Elissa Slotkin, thank you very, very much for coming on the show this morning. We look forward to hearing what happens at the White House today.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.